All right, guys, welcome to the Introvert Dating Success Show. Today, we are interviewing Jean-eva Dickie, and she is a matchmaker from Nova Scotia and founder of JE Matchmaking. She teaches single men and women how to become the best versions of themselves with the mindset, skills, and confidence to approach the dating world by way of dating coaching, matchmaking, and singles events. And she also has a podcast called The Book of Love, which I did an interview for a couple of months ago. And it's where she chats with single men and women, as well as other dating experts, to discuss their experiences in the dating world and how they can improve moving forward. Jeaneva, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on here after having you on as a guest. And I've listened to your podcast for close to a year now, and I'm just really excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, it was nice after I came on your show. It just dawned on me that I really had never talked about matchmaking on my show, nor had I ever interviewed anybody that had done matchmaking. And I thought to myself, man, what a great route that other guys might want to consider when dating. But I just didn't have any information about it. So obviously, we're going to talk about matchmaking in the industry and how it works. But I want to start with your personal story of how you got into the matchmaking profession.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so funny because when people ask me how I got into it, I should be like, oh, when I was 5, I was matchmaking my Barbies. And, I've just always had it in me to do this. And unfortunately for me, that's not the case. I actually used to be a geomatics engineer in a different life. So I'm in Canada, and I was up in northern Alberta working in oil and gas. I was working with a bunch of dudes, making maps, doing that thing. And that was kind of my career. And for anybody that lives in Canada, you know that, when you're in Alberta and you are from Nova Scotia, your heart is like stuck at home. You want to get back there so bad. So when I turned 30, I decided to move back home to Nova Scotia, but I had to leave that $90,000 job behind in order to do that, because we don't have anything like this here. And so I moved back to Nova Scotia, and I always knew that I wanted to start a business, but I had no idea what it would be. And so I was just dabbling in a bunch of things. And one of those things happened to be speed dating. And I did a speed dating event here in the city, and it's a relatively small city. We only have about 1 million people in our entire province. So the city itself, I think, is close to 400,000. And so I did a speed dating event, and everybody loved it. So we started doing more speed dating events. And then I noticed that, when people were left to their own devices of who they're selecting based on a 7-minute date, there was a lot of incompatible people leaving those speed dating events. And I knew them all quite well. So I was like, oh, Susie, she hates people who smoke weed, and she's leaving with John, who pretty much smokes weed every day. You know what I mean? Like that, I'm going to see them here again in a month. And then, so then I started matchmaking, because I was like, okay, cool. They'll tell me exactly what they want, and I will match people based on exactly what they want. And that'll be perfect. We'll create all these couples, and people get married and have babies, and that's all we need to do. And then I realized through matchmaking that I could introduce somebody to their perfect person and their past blocks, their past habits, their past experiences, those things that have been holding them back their whole life will self-sabotage lots of amazing, amazing matches. So then we introduced the coaching, and that is when the business completely transformed, and we started creating tons of couples, and really longevity-based couples too, which is amazing.
Oh, wow. So you probably have a good track record then of getting people together as a result of your services. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we have a new engagement. We pretty much have a new engagement every three months, if it's a good 3 months. And sometimes we get, a couple groups of engagements all in the same month. And I'm hoping for a baby here soon. We got a couple weddings, but yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Awesome. Now, in doing my research, I noticed that you also used to be a sales assistant and a marketing coordinator. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So have you found any correlation between what it takes to be successful in sales and what it takes to be successful in dating?
Well, it's all the exact same stuff. So sales and dating is the same. When I I do a boot camp. I do boot camps for both men and women, and it's a 3-month dating intensive boot camp where we teach people how to get out and date intensely for 3 months. So I believe, there's a lot of work that we can do on our past and our experiences, but sometimes just getting out there and getting on dates and making those mistakes and messing up and succeeding is the best way to really learn to become very good at dating. And so these 3-month dating intensive boot camps, basically the entire system that we use, it's a numbers game. We are teaching people where to meet people in all different aspects: online dating, organically, at events, through social media, through friends. And through that, we are just bringing in a funnel of single people into our clients' lives so that, over time, they will develop their date skills, which is like that sales pitch skill. When you're great on a first date, you're likely going to get a second date. If you're great at your sales pitch, you're likely going to get the sell, right? So it's the same thing, dating and sales, 100%. Do you agree?
Oh, no, actually, I fully agree. There was a guy I used to follow named Doc Love, he was like big in the dating industry. So he died last year, but he used to always say like dating is like sales in the sense of how you present yourself, in the sense of, you're basically the product that you're trying to sell to this other person, and you want to make sure you're coming across authentic, but it's in a way where they're going to want to connect with you. And it's pretty much like sales. Like, you can't force a person. You have to kind of just like be in their presence and know how to present the best parts. That way they want to get with you. And once I got that part, it was a lot easier to kind of figure out the whole dating thing.
Exactly. And like the same as if you get rejected with sales, you're not going to be destroyed for an entire week. You're like, man, that sucks. But you're on to, the next relatively quickly. The only difference that I find that really is one of the most powerful part of sales that some people forget is the reflection and the improvement. And that's the hardest thing to do with dating. So with sales, it's relatively easy. I said this, I should say this instead. But with dating, it's so personal that self-reflection and improvement can be quite hard, because to do that reflection on yourself is quite tricky, but it's the most powerful part to date higher quality people, to then be able to attract the quality of people you deserve.
Very true. So freaking true.
Yeah.
So in terms of dealing with men, what makes men feel comfortable coming to you to ask for help in dating? Because that can be a very hard thing for men to admit to, that they need help and that they want to hire somebody on to like actually do that.
So what I do when it comes to men is I do not pressure. So one thing that I noticed very early on in my matchmaking career, if a guy was not interested in coming to me, or he wasn't interested in coming to an event, there's pretty much nothing that I could say to change his mind. And so what I did is consistency was the key for me. So I have a huge social media presence. And so I consistently have myself out there. So a lot of these gentlemen, they're watching me for a long time. So they're already connecting with me as like my mindset and my values around matchmaking. Now, my number one rule when working with women or men in any way is no bashing of the opposite sex. And I think when, in today's modern day culture, it's so common and so accepted to just rip men to pieces so easily, that when a gentleman hears that one of the main things that I have in my business is there's no man bashing, it feels like more of a safe place. I'm not going to be ripping him to pieces. I'm not going to be judging him. Also, I myself, before becoming a matchmaker, I'm a recovering man hater. I'm a recovering, strong, independent woman that would scream it from the rooftops. And it took me realizing how amazing men were, how they actually choose to love, rather than me wanting them to love me like how I wanted to be loved. I learned how to accept their love for how they choose to love, and realizing what it was that they were looking for in partnership. So I have been the woman that men run from, and now I'm the woman that that men run to, because I have been through that self-growth journey myself, coming from a man hater to a man lover.
That's interesting. Cause so I guess my question to that is the side question is so back in the day when you were feeling those things, were you feeling like the way in which men view dating or wanted to date was like offensive or possibly like anti-feminist, or just like what were your feelings about how men were perceiving the dating world?
No, it actually honestly, my feelings around that had nothing to do with men. It had nothing to do with men. My feelings around being a man hater had to do with my inability to determine what men wanted. So I think back then I would have said, oh, all guys just want this, all guys just want that. I would have probably said something like that back then. But now when I realized it was my own insecurities of, because I had that big oil and gas job, and I wanted everybody to be proud of how hard it was I worked to get there. But I realized it took me realizing that nobody cares how hard it took for me to get there. I should be confident enough in who I am and who I've become and what I've accomplished that I don't need validation from the men that I'm dating, that I don't need validation from my mom, my dad, my friends. I needed that for myself. And the minute I was able to do that and just accept those people around me coming to me because they cared about me, that was the difference. And so it really had nothing to do with how men dated. It had to do with me not understanding how to date. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally does. So let's go ahead and get into the nitty gritty of matchmaking itself. So to start, obviously this is a show where I talk to introverted men. Why should introverted men consider matchmaking as an avenue they use to try to meet women?
Well, probably, and I haven't done the actual statistics. I have 700 people in the Book of Love, which is my matchmaking database. Probably 3/4 of them are introverts. The reason that is because matchmaking is amazing because you go to a matchmaker, you get yourself into a database, you tell that matchmaker exactly what you want, and she will send you out on dates with women that are what you want. So you don't have to swipe endlessly online. You don't have to chat online and be witty and bantery over text message prior to ever even meeting somebody and having, 90% of those fall off. You go directly on a date with the type of woman that you want. I have a lot of gentlemen that come to me and, we've sent them on a couple dates. It didn't go anywhere. And they went back online dating. And then they came back to me. He's like, do you have like another date? Cause I just honestly cannot keep swiping anymore. And you send me out with like these beautiful, amazing women. They may not be my person, but it's just so much better. So as an introvert, when your energy and the time you spend communicating with people can be so draining, the fact that you can package that all up into like a 2-hour date, what would normally take talking to 10 people over the span of a couple weeks to get onto that one date, it's just a huge time save. So that's why I really think people need to come to a matchmaker. But also when it comes to being an introvert and coming to a matchmaker, you need to have somebody in your corner pushing you outside of your comfort zone. Because if your default is to really kind of turtle, then, your matchmaker is going to say, no, we're getting you out on another date because, or you have to follow up with her. I know that you don't feel like texting right now. You're feeling stressed out, but you need to follow up on her. Or let's talk about those feelings of how you think dating feels like a chore. You should read this book and see and realize that those feelings you have are normal. So really just having somebody in your corner, understanding where you're coming from, pushing you a little bit, and also just saving your time is the best thing.
That's so true. Because I know as an introvert myself, I'm very good at the online dating realm with things, but I had a friend of mine who was a female that she had dated some guy for like 9 years, then stopped, and she didn't want to date anybody. And I had to convince her to get on the dating apps. And then from there, it's like, there would be times where she's like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. And I was like, hey, I get it. You don't want to keep spending this energy, but it's worth it to put yourself out there. And then fast forward to a couple of months later, she met a guy and they've been dating for like a year now. It's like, oh, you just need that extra push to do that. But like, if you're just an introvert solo by yourself, it can be very hard to be like, it'll be like, I went on a date, it didn't work out, so I'm done. Like that was tiring and I don't want to do it anymore. But you still want to be with somebody. You just don't want to do the work. So and
it's so hard to focus on the outcome. Like sometimes when we're deep into the dating world, we have to like almost write it on a piece of paper and have it on our fridge saying like the outcome is we're not going to be spending any more Sundays alone. The outcome is we get to build a life with somebody. So this sucks. That date sucked. The conversation sucked. But the outcome is worth all of this pain, right? Yeah,
very, very true. So how do you then determine what will be a good match for whether it's your introverted clients or you're not? So like in terms of the men you're dealing with, how do you say, okay, this person would be good with this person?
So that's, it's so funny because when I first started matchmaking, I took this course to become a certified matchmaker. And all I wanted to know was who to match up with whom and what makes a good match. Because at the very beginning, I had no idea what I was doing. And literally all the textbook said, and this was a course that I spent lots of money on, all the textbook really said was, it's just your intuition. That is all that you can really figure out is a good match from one client to another. Now, we do have a software that really pulls out all of that really important stuff like smoking, drinking, 420, their thoughts on marriage, children, politics, religion, all of that big stuff that we get put away to like, okay, they're matching all here. But really what it takes is compatible personalities, not similar personalities. You do not want a carbon copy of you. A lot of people tell me, like, I say, what do you want? And they just write this person out. I'm like, okay, that's a female version of you. You don't actually want that. Or whatever it may be. And so complementary personalities. For example, if somebody is really quiet and introverted, I tend to like to send him out with a woman who's all bubbles. She's just bubbly energy, just kind of like, you know what I mean? And he can just sit there and just enjoy her energy. And like, that's a really good match for me. But most of the time when I'm matching people, it has to do with similar interests, of course, similar values, similar upbringing, similar ambition levels, opposites I don't feel attract nearly as much as romantic ideals make it seem like it does. If they seem like they would run in the same circles, if they would run in the same circle of friends, I will usually kind of introduce them as well. So, but really it's when I have like a whole database of people, someone walks in, they start talking and people start popping in my head as good matches. I'm like, okay, Susie would be good. Allison would be good. And that's really where it comes from. It's just like the relation of what they're telling me that they're looking for and having people pop into my heads. So that's usually how the matchmaking works. I wish we could quantify it more or make a formula out of it. I'd be like a billionaire and we would not be doing this. But like, yeah, that's kind of what I do to match.
I mean, that means you have to have a good memory too, to be like, okay, like this person that signed up 6 weeks ago will match well with this person who just signed up today. Like that's a lot of people have to keep in your head to be able to remember their personalities and the distinct things that they're looking for to be able to match that up. Like how are you able to manage all that?
I think honestly, that's just something that I've naturally been very good at. And the people that are kind of, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So the people that I'm working with most, the people that are investing in coaching, coming to events, coming to the webinars, listening to the podcast, sending me messages, interacting on my social media, usually they will be the ones that are kind of at the front of my mind when it comes to other people coming in. But the database really does help. Like our software really does help pull up those people that are, 93, 95% compatible. And I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember, I only talked to her once 6 months ago, but yeah, I think that they would be a great match too. So the software is really helpful for that. But I naturally, I think, have just a really good energy of ability to pick up on people's energy and remember what they like and all that kind of stuff. So
that's good. I mean, clearly it's good for the business, but that's just a good skill to have in general. So what is the application process like? Like, how do you find your clientele? How do they come to you? And then what's that look like in terms of you agreeing to work with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I pride myself in my business that I have something for everybody. So unfortunately, matchmaking, we only matchmake people for Nova Scotia, Canada. So we have a lot of people coming from all over the world because we have an interesting TikTok following. So we got a lot of people coming from TikTok, the podcast, a lot of people coming from social media. About 35% is word of mouth. So when you create a couple in this city, they're just like a walking billboard. So all of their friends will kick down our door the next week, right? So, but what the interview process really looks like, of course, I jump on a phone call with everybody, a 15-minute phone call talking about them, what it is they're looking for, what their struggles are in today's dating world. And then we come up with a dating plan. So the dating plan looks different for everybody based on their specific needs. So for example, if someone lives outside Nova Scotia, matchmaking is not an option. We would always recommend, we have like an online dating course, which will teach people how to properly build an online dating profile. We tend to send them there first so that they can perfect their pictures, perfect their profile, put the effort into online dating that they deserve. And then there'll be kind of like a little bit of a coaching program. Now, the main thing when choosing to work with somebody is the fact that they are coachable. If you're coming to me and the only thing that you think that you need is to be introduced to the right person and you're perfect, likely I'm not going to work with you, because there has to be a certain amount of coachability there. There has to be a certain amount of humbleness that you need to have when coming to a dating coach, because you wouldn't be coming to a dating coach if you were amazing at dating or if you could find anybody that you wanted, right? And I'm not going to go into a laboratory and cook up your perfect person. That's not how matchmaking works. You have to be the best version of yourself in order to attract the best quality partner. And so coachability is huge for that. But we don't really have, outside of the phone call, we kind of send people on their own personal coaching or matchmaking or event journey. But it's not a huge filtering process. We're not an elite matchmaker where we only work with a certain group of people. We do have a spot for everybody based on their specific needs, so long as you're coachable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then once you take somebody on, like, what is the coaching process in terms of what kind of exercises do you do or help them with to increase their chances of not only finding love, but also being able to keep it long term?
Yeah. So number one thing, and I am a huge advocate for attachment theory and attachment styles. You're nodding your head right now. We all know how powerful that is. So basically, I've created a lot of amazing couples being a matchmaker. Like, I've introduced a lot of great couples. And I would like to say that that was all me and I'm amazing. But really what has created the longevity of a lot of those couples is me giving them the book Attached and just saying, I need you to read this and I need you to see what's going on here. Because when people are coming to me in their 30s, their late 30s, early 40s, looking for a partnership, and they have had a couple of long-term partnerships, but nothing that has led to marriage or anything like that, then usually there is something that's hanging them up. And usually it's somewhere attached to their attachment style. So the first thing I will do is really kind of send people on their own attachment style journey. I'm not good at describing it. I'm not good at teaching it. The book does all of that for me. And so that's number one for me, because if I don't partner them up, if I don't introduce them to their person, those attachment skills that they learn from that book will take them into their future partnership much better. And it's going to more likely bring them into their future partnership. Because if anybody knows anything about anxious attachment, there's nothing that self-sabotages more. And there's nothing that attracts more dysfunctional attachment than an anxious or an avoidant attachment person, right? So if we want a secure, amazing relationship, we have to first look inwards on ourselves and figure out what's going on there. What was the other question you asked?
Just what exercise do you do to increase a person's chances of finding and keeping love?
Yeah. So when it comes to, say, for example, we went into the boot camp. So keeping love is definitely attachment styles for me. And then finding love, I really just throw them into the deep end. I really want to get people out swiping. I want to get people out dating. I want to get people out meeting people. And then as they're out meeting people, as they're making mistakes, as they're out playing, which is, I think dating is playing. A lot of people don't, but as they're out playing, we kind of do these seminars that are going to teach them how to flirt over text message, how to follow up after a first date, how to do a first date from start to finish. Like, what do you do? Who kisses whom? Who pays? Who arrives first? Do you pull out the chair? We basically script the first date from start to finish. And we're not scripting the words, but we're scripting what's beautiful about, being able to go out dating as like straight people, like a man and a female, is that there is a script. There is basically in writing what it should be done. And if you kind of follow that script and you check all those boxes, you're more likely to get on a second date. But, a lot of people don't know what that script is. I mean, we usually learn it from our fathers, our uncles, our cousins, and things like that. And that's not happening a lot more as much as it used to. And so we teach some of these young men and men these scripts to just be an amazing first date. And then, what else do we teach? My gosh, there's like a million things. Yeah, how to online date properly, how to keep the numbers up, how to stay from being burnt out and frustrated, and just the nuts and bolts of all of it.
Okay. Now I do have a question about because I'm very much of a fan of scripting in terms of having a template and kind of knowing how things should flow. When you tell men that you're going to be giving them scripts, do you ever get any pushback of them saying like, well, is that me not being authentic, or is that me playing a game with the woman? Like how do you respond to a guy that might think that when you first present that to them?
Yeah, I get a lot of pushback when it comes to scripts. I think it might just be the word script, but I get a lot of pushback when I say, put some more effort into your photos online dating. Well, that just seems so try hard. I shouldn't have to try that hard. Or let's talk about how this first date goes to start from to finish. Well, I know how to do a first date. I do get a lot of pushback, and usually what I do is I just say, listen, I say this to every man, from the handsome, beautiful, amazing lawyer dude to whomever would be on the other side of that. I say this to everybody. Not that they're not going to do that, but there's going to be little tips in here that you may not have done, and they will tip the scale a lot more. And or it's just a check mark that you're already doing this and you're amazing. But I have had women where I will teach a first date script to a guy, and the one thing that I taught him in the script that he didn't already know was the one reason that she said yes to a second date. And that's usually opening her car door. That's usually walking her to her car and opening up her car door for her. So that's usually what it is. And usually by then, when I'm like, she wants to go on a second date, mostly because you opened up the car door for her, they're kind of sold out on it at that point.
Right.
Do you find that too? Do you find that script, they really push back on scripts?
Well, it's just, I talk to men, but I also talk to women. And so I get a lot of different responses depending on like their viewpoint on dating and, if things are being manipulated versus being, authentic. And it's sometimes hard to explain even to guys that the thing I'm teaching you is not a means to be like manipulative or different, but it's just realistically, these are skills that or things that you haven't considered that women need to be able to experience to be attracted to you. And that those things aren't bad things to learn. It's just, it's new to you and foreign to you. So it's going to feel weird at first when you're doing these things, but over time, as they become more comfortable, it'll become a natural part of how you function as a dater. We didn't all come out the womb knowing to open doors for women. You got to be taught that stuff. And once you do, it's like, oh, every woman I've been on a date with is like, oh my God, no guy ever does this. That should be part of their script. If they're not doing it and being their natural selves because by way of doing it, well, you're also not getting women to stay around. So
Yeah, exactly. And when we talk about like the game thing, like we're like that feels like a game, that feels like playing games or what have you. It's the same as if you were to go to an interview. You're not just going to go to an interview at your default level of who you are. You're not going to show up and be like, bro, what's up? Like, let's talk about this job. You're going to be an elevated version of yourself, right? And you're going to learn a lot of different things you're going to be Googling how to do a great first interview. You're going to be doing the research to get that job. And so we don't call that playing games. We don't call that being a game, but we are a work interview version of ourselves. And it's the same when we're on a date too. Yes, eventually we'll be able to really kind of come into our true colors and they'll be able to see all of that. And it's going to be a beautiful thing. But in today's dating world, we have to put our best foot forward. And a huge part of that is scripting and just learning from somebody that knows.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like, because I used to do theater where you learn the script enough to where if you happen to go off book, you still know the general pathway of where this scene is going to go. So you can change a few words here and there to your liking or add a little bit more personality to it. But it's still not going to affect the overall result that you get. Exactly. And I think if more guys looked at it like that, it would be taken less as a game and more so like, oh, like it's just everything has a function and style to make it work the best way it possibly can.
Yeah.
You know?
And how do you find, I know we're kind of probably getting off topic, but how do you find like when, I find it hard when we get that pushback a lot of the time, and I don't know if it's the right term for it. And that's why I wanted to ask you, is it kind of like the male ego of already feeling like we should already have these skills, and to think that we have to learn more is hard on our ego? Is that kind of where it's coming from when we get the pushback, or is it just genuine curiosity?
I think it's honestly more so in terms of the ego side of things. I honestly think that men get to a point where, well, we're already trying to do the best we can. And so we don't want to question how we are, and we don't want to question like how perfect we see ourselves being. So a guy going out there in the dating world, a lot of guys, if they're having trouble, the first thought is, it's not me, it's all these women that I'm dating don't understand what the kind of guy they should want and what they should be liking, instead of looking at, but what do women actually respond to in the best way? Yeah. And so, at least for me, once I took the ego out of it and said, hey, I don't know everything. Even as a dating coach now, I still tell guys I'm consistently studying stuff, watching stuff, learning stuff. And so it's like, you can't ever think that once you got the woman, yep, that's it, I figured it out, my life is done now. It's like, no, because there's going to be curveballs thrown at you and you got to keep learning. And if you're open to that, then your ego, I say to guys, make your ego one where it's like, I'm a guy that's always open to learning new stuff. That way, if you learn something new, you're not going to feel like you're less than or that you're not yourself because you didn't know this thing. You know, ideally, you're saving it where you realize you're not perfect, which is totally fine, you know? Yeah.
And actually super sexy. Like, women find that so sexy when someone's working on themselves, somebody is, you know, accepting when they're not perfect. It's funny. I just started working with a male coach here in Halifax. We're going to be doing a boot camp, and he's kind of going through the journey of creating the syllabus and going through the journey of, like, you know, becoming a dating coach. And we all know what that's like. And, but he's also dating. And he's like, man, because he'll text me. He'll be like, oh my gosh, I heard from this girl 9 months ago. Do you remember? I told you about her. Like, this is what she's saying. And I'm like, Sean, what would you tell your client to do? And he's like, it's so hard. And I'm like, I know it's hard, but you know, so yeah, even as a dating coach, you are not perfect. You mess up all the time. My boyfriend, whenever we get in a fight, he's like, you're a matchmaker dating coach. Shouldn't you fix this? And I'm like, I have no idea. My emotions are in it right now.
I'm not a fan of that either. Like, at times it's been hard to tell women like, hey, I do this, because the feeling is anytime a conflict comes up, the response you're going to get is, but you should know this, because it's like, no, I'm a coach because I can help people based on what I know up to this point. That doesn't mean I know everything, and I still got more stuff to learn. So if I come up against something, what I don't want to hear is, oh, but you're a dating coach, because that's not the excuse that should be given for that. That doesn't mean that I can't still mess up or do things, you know? So it's an interesting road to go down. But yeah, but in terms of, so you're coaching people and you're putting them on dates. What happens when you match two people and say, for whatever reason, either person is not feeling the other person? Like, what's the follow-up plan for that person? Whether is it getting them more dates? Is it trying to coach them more? Like, what's the follow-up plan for them to be helped by you continuously?
So our default, so normally what our like baseline is I like to send people out on 3 dates. So normally within those 3 dates, they will likely meet their person, because it's through a matchmaker and we're matching based on compatibility. 3 dates is kind of the key. Usually within those 3 dates, they meet their person and it kind of continues on nicely. Now, if after those 3 dates, they've all kind of fallen off, and I recognize patterns, or I've gotten feedback and I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? We will actually, and it's in the contract, we pause your profile and you come in for one-on-one coaching. And usually it's like it's just a blow by blow of what is holding you back. Because I know 3 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're going out with extremely compatible people that have come to a matchmaker and are looking for a partnership and you still can't continue on with them, there's something there. So we usually pause it and we kind of go into it a little bit deeper as to what's going on. Now, if it's just bad luck, and if I haven't seen a ton of patterns, or I haven't gotten any bad feedback and it was just 3 bad luck matches, then we'll kind of continue on with more matches. But yeah, usually at the 3 date mark, we'll stop it and we'll really see what's going on. And usually by the 3rd date point, if they're not up for coaching, that pause is usually just ending their membership with the Book of Love. Because if you're not willing to be coached, there's really not much we can do. I really cannot just set you up with your perfect person and they're going to solve all your problems. We have to really dig deep into it. But outside of that, say, for example, they're dating for 3 months and it just ends. What we'll do is they are usually a little bit more open to come in and coach and just kind of talk about what happened there. Yes, we'll give them the bereavement time that they need, even if it's like a month, 6 months, or what have you. But people, once they're in the Book of Love, they're in there indefinitely. So say, for example, they met somebody and they were dating for 6 months. It didn't work out. Yep, we're just going to reactivate their profile and send them out on more dates.
Okay, and that's fair. I think 3 dates, especially for introverted men, like that's a lot of 3 dates is a lot of energy to have to put out there already. But if ideally you're matching with people that are supposed to be compatible, then that should be more than enough time for them to really figure that out, or figure out if it's something that they're doing that's chasing these three people that are supposed to be the perfect matches off.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. And I mean, for example, we work with a lot of introvert guys, and by being a guest on my podcast, I have a soft spot for introverted men. I personally think that they are superheroes. I love them. It's like the only people that I dated. I loved it. But but with introverted men, I do find that there's a tendency of them having a little bit more avoidant attachment styles. The kind of correlates with that introvert lifestyle. And so sometimes there tends to be a little bit more ghosting, or there seems to be a little bit more canceling the date last minute. And there seems to be a little bit more miscommunication. And so if things like that start happening, I have designed my business to avoid any ghosting and miscommunication and mixed signals as best as I can. And if that starts happening, then I will stop it. I'll give them a phone call, and it's basically angry mama bear matchmaker will rip you a new one a little bit. But you need it. I mean, I'm nice about it, but you need it because, your mom and dad probably say this to you, your family says it to you, your friends say it to you. But when you have a professional you're paying say it to you, you're more likely going to listen. So yeah, there's usually some difficult conversations after some dates, but that's why we're coming to a matchmaker.
I'm interested. Like, how do you help to lessen the amount of ghosting that an introvert would want to do? Because I know me, like I've gotten much better at being able to stay for the hard conversations, or if somebody's starting to annoy me, like to not just go away or be completely gone. But it's like, that's a hard thing to build. So how do you implement that into your business with introverts specifically?
Scripting.
There you go.
So, mostly, if I kind of know their personality and they maybe have opened up to me that this is a little bit more of their dating style, I will. So their first date is completely controlled by me. So I'll organize the date. They don't get last names, phone numbers, and they don't go for a first kiss on a first date. And then I call them 24 hours after. Say, for example, they're super into each other. They get each other's contact information and they take it from there. If they didn't like each other, I just never connect them. So there's no ghosting. There's no mixed signals after a first date because I say, sorry, it's not a romantic fit, on to the next, basically. Then once they have each other's phone number and they take it from there, usually after the first date, I'll talk to him and I'll say, okay, so how do these normally go for you? Or if he's on the fence, sometimes I get a lot of introverted guys that are on the fence about, and you probably have seen this or heard this before, they're on the fence about saying yes because they're not 100% sure if they want, like they're not 100% sure if she's the one. And I'm saying to them, like, you will not know this on a first date. You will need to spend more time with her and go on more dates with her to determine this. But they are so fearful of hurting anybody's feelings that they would rather say no to a first date that they're unsure of than to say yes and discover what it is, because they don't know how to let her down when they realize that they're not interested. They don't know how to do that, which is the foundation of ghosting. I don't think ghosting inherently is done by evil people to be horrible to each other. It's a lack of being able to communicate. And so what I do is I say, listen, if you go on a second date with her and you realize that she is not the one for you, all you have to do is send this text message. And, or if you do, I just kind of give them these different scenarios that may come up and the script that goes along with it. And it gives them a lot more knowledge and a lot more power to get out of their existing cycle and maybe discover something amazing with somebody. So that's usually how that continues on to hopefully avoid ghosting and last minute cancellations and things like that. It still happens because that's just part of dating, but I try to avoid as much as possible.
Yeah, that's good. And I do see the part like I hadn't considered their ghosting because they're assuming that if they didn't have that spark right away, or a lot of times we feel as guys, if we'll know we like a woman when we see her and it's just like, yep, she's the one. And it's like sometimes it takes more than just that first meetup because you still haven't actually talked to the person or really experienced them beyond just like the 45-minute to hour-long date you had as that first date. Like, what other things could you experience with this person that would make you feel like there could be that longer connection?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, that's hard for everybody, right? So, and my little go-to trick is 3 dates. 3 dates. If you know, you'll know by the third date. We don't need a fourth date on the fence. I think the third date is usually good. And then just to call it off with a nice text message saying, hey, I don't think we're a good romantic fit, and you're good to go. I really think that each person deserves a little bit more time than normal. And I think that we also can kind of stop it on the third date.
Yeah, because usually by the third date, if you haven't kissed or hugged the person or gotten any kind of physicality in the way, then it pretty much is downhill from there anyway. So yeah.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we've had a global pandemic going on for the last, now 2 years. How has that affected the matchmaking business?
Okay, so when this first happened, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm out of business. This sucks. I've been building this for a year. The pandemic has absolutely launched matchmaking through the roof. It has done wonders for the matchmaking industry because,
really?
Yes, it has probably launched a lot of matchmaking companies, or it has elevated a lot of matchmaking companies, because outside of online dating, how else are you going to meet people? And then people start Googling dating in Halifax. How do I meet people? You know what I mean? Or dating, other forms of dating. How do I meet people during pandemic? And Matchmaker is usually pretty close there. And there's a lot of different types of matchmakers out there too. I mean, when we think matchmaker, we either think like Fiddler on the Roof. She's going around in everybody's business and matchmaking all these young people. Or we're thinking this, woman who only interviews millionaire men and just parades hot, beautiful women in front of him. That's not the case anymore. There's a million different types of matchmakers. I like to call myself more of like a matchmaker for the people, because we have very reasonable prices, and we will, work with pretty much everybody so long as they're coachable, and we have a little avenue for everybody. But I believe that there is a lid for every pot. So there's all types of matchmakers out there that would be a great fit for everybody. There's a lot of like your best friend matchmaker, a friend of a friend matchmaker, where it's like you're going to a friend and they're setting you up with people, right? So it's not as terrifying as a lot of people think it is, but the pandemic has absolutely launched the industry through the roof. It's seeing a huge evolution.
Wow, because I knew it definitely improved online dating, but I didn't know as a other effect of that would be like, oh, even people that are online dating, it's like, but they're swiping, but they don't know who to pick or what to do. It's like, oh, maybe I can still do this thing, but with somebody to help me also to figure out which ones are actually the right matches, or which ones are actually going to be, somebody I could connect with. That's fascinating that actually picked up more.
A lot of people say, they're like, oh, how do you compete with online dating? And I'm like, guys, I am not competing with online dating. Online dating is throwing people at me, because so many people are having such a bad experience with online dating. It just throws people at matchmakers, because every single phone call that I have about 7 a day. Every single onboarding phone call is, I'm like, why did you want to reach out to a matchmaker? Oh, I hate online dating. I'm like, okay. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Now, how can people that are not in Nova Scotia still work with you? I know, for example, you have a webinar coming up. Tell us the other ways people can get your help from wherever they're at in the world.
Yeah, totally. So if you're not in Nova Scotia, we do coaching all around the world. So we can do one-on-one coaching with you, but we also do, we have a webinar coming up February 9th. Yes. And we're going to be talking about what you're doing wrong with online dating. So every 3 months, we do a webinar, one for men and one for women. So this one is for men only. And then we do one for women only as well. And that is going to be just pure training. So I really should be holding a lot more of my training cards close to my chest, but I really feel that empowering people to get out and date and really understand the online dating culture, especially now, because I'm doing a series on TikTok called What Are You Doing Wrong with Online Dating? You can find me anywhere at JE Matchmaking. So at JE Matchmaking, that's where you can find it. And jematchmaking.com is where you can register for this webinar as well. And that is really going to be like your first introduction to what we have to offer. So there could be one-on-one coaching. We do virtual 3-month dating intensive boot camps that you could plug into. Unfortunately, events and matchmaking would be off the roster if you're not in Nova Scotia. But boot camps, I can't even talk about how valuable the boot camps are, because you're in a room with 9 10 other people or 9 other people. It's boot camp for men and boot camp for women, and they're going through the same thing. And I mean, especially for men, it's to come together in a group of just men and admitting that we may not know exactly what we're doing in something as intimate as dating is a really powerful thing. And when you hear other guys going through the same thing, having the same struggles, it's empowering because you realize that it's not just you. You're not alone, and coming and asking for help is powerful. And so we take you from not knowing how to do anything, which isn't everybody. Most people aren't, I don't know what to do. Most people have a lot of, knowledge, to being able to date amazing women, the type of women that you deserve, and choosing the proper partnership for you. So we teach you everything in the middle of that. So that is really how you can work with me if you're outside of Nova Scotia, if you kind of like feel my energy. And we're all about pure tips here. Like, we do a little bit of inner work, but really not much. I'm just all about practical tips on how to get out there, how to meet people, how to be an amazing first date, and how to find your partnership.
Nice. And then also your podcast, I just briefly go over that because I think your podcast is fascinating. I mean, obviously I was on it, but just tell people what they can learn by listening to your podcast, The Book of Love.
So the podcast has evolved. So it started off as a matchmaking podcast. So it was just going to be local. I was going to bring some people on. They're going to talk about their struggles in dating, what they're looking for, and then people could apply to go on a date with them. And then as the podcast evolved, it turned into bringing on experts, so other matchmakers, other dating coaches, to talk about the industry of dating. Each dating coach and each matchmaker has their completely different perspective on anything. And that's one thing when we're looking for a dating coach. Maybe the person you're listening to isn't who you're relating to. There's probably a million other dating coaches out there that are speaking your language, right? And so bringing them on and just seeing what battle they want to battle, what niche that they are working with, because each single is so unique. They have their own struggles that each dating coach is completely different. And then we have a book club. So a book club, we are reading How Not to Die Alone by Youre. I don't know if you've read it.
I've never heard of that book before.
Really? I think it is the best modern day dating book out there at the moment.
Okay,
it is a little bit more geared towards women than men. So it may not be applicable, but it is. I've had lots of men read it and they just find a ton of value in it. So we have a book club where I bring in local singles and we talk about the book every month. And then I did a live show a couple weeks ago where we did like a live dating game where we had 3 bachelors and 1 bachelorette. Honestly, it's just something fun. I just love talking to people and see what's going on in the industry and talking to singles, and dating is fascinating.
Yeah, no, I've been studying this stuff since I was like 21, and I still like read new stuff every day that fascinates me, just about the psychology of it and just like the differences and how you make those differences work with each other, and then how you get men and women to be together and handle conflicts and, be able to attract each other more. Like it's just a fascinating field in general, especially if you're like really like into it, And
you're never going to be perfect at it, because like I still watch. Like I was watching Too Hot to Handle yesterday. Guilty pleasure. I love it. But I'm trying to think like when they were coming in and I'm like, okay, I'm an expert. And I'm like, I think they'll be together. And I think they'll get together. And I think they'll get together. And this is why. I still never get it right. Like, and I'm like, and I'm an expert. And you're never going to be perfect when it comes to human attraction.
Oh yeah. First of all, Love is Blind. The new season starts next month, but also sometimes what I'll do, cause I never watched all the seasons of Married at First Sight. Mm-hmm. So I'm watching season 8 now. And what I'm doing for this season is I look at the end to see what couples stay together and like if they're still together. So now I'm watching the show is to see like, okay, what things are they doing that's determining if these couples break up or if they're going to stay together, just to see if there's any correlation between like just if you can see or what's happening and then how it built to where they stayed together versus how it built to where it fell apart, just a little game for myself. Be like, if I know the ending already, then what things will I notice? Just,
That is a great idea. Are you the person that flips to the back of the book and reads the last chapter too?
Not all the time. Most of these shows, like again, I've been through seasons 1 through 7 where I didn't do that. And I just like, for one of these seasons, I want to just try it where I already know the ending and then see if I could look at how that affects my lens of looking at the show as I watch it, knowing that they're going to end up together.
Yeah. But it's interesting too, because and I watch a lot of TikTok and I watch a lot of reels, and like I'm getting down like the red pill kind of area where like it's all these dudes with their podcasts talking about what women are doing wrong, and then we get the women that are talking about what the guys are doing wrong, and it's like it's hard because you can't figure it out. You can't figure out what will attract one person to another person because you have to get into their head. That's one of the biggest struggles I have with my clients is if they don't tell me exactly what they want, it's very, very hard to match them because I need to be in their eyes walking down the street and seeing like 100 women walking towards me. And I need to know which 10 women they would want to meet, right? But they have to be able to verbalize that. But a lot of the time, even being able to verbalize that is hard.
Well, yeah, because I'll just say this from the men's side of things. I know that as a guy, there could be things that we know what we want, but we fear that if we vocalize it, it's going to be taken in a negative way. Like if a guy's like, oh, I just want to date a woman that's going to stay home and take care of the kids. In today's progressive world, that could be seen as misogynistic or holding the woman down. And so a guy might fear saying that he wants that thing because how is he going to be looked at? Are there going to be any women out there that are going to actually agree to that or that want to stay home? Or are they going to be judging him like, well, I want to just be able to work and do what I want. And you're going to be like, guys have a lot of, and I don't think women oftentimes are aware of just how many fears guys have as it pertains to, well, I want this thing, but I'm not sure if this thing that I want is a negative thing or is going to be seen as a positive thing. And I just don't want to verbalize that. So I'll just say I want something else, even though it's not what I actually want. Not being aware that women had that same thing too, of like, I'm sure women go through the thing of, well, what if I want these traditional things? Or what if I want these things that women are saying now? Like, what if I don't want to work? Am I not being progressive enough? Or are the women going to judge me? Like, so there's a lot of complications that the world brings where we can't feel comfortable with the choices that we actually want.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's powerful stuff. Totally. Yeah. And I think like the good point there is like when we're out dating too, the questions that we need to ask, it's less so, really telling people what, like when you're out dating and you're qualifying, we want to, instead of telling people what we want, ask them what they want. Like, what are you looking for in a future partnership? Like, what would your ideal marriage look like? And truly listen to their answer. And this is a really kind of unique exercise because you can determine based on what they tell you if they meet your criteria, and you can either let them go or continue on with them, right? So, but the honesty there may or may not be there. But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky stuff.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. It really is. But this has been a fascinating, I could talk about dating stuff all day long, but this definitely gave a lot of good insights into the matchmaking process specifically. So guys, if you have not considered matchmaking before, I'm in LA. They have matchmaking services all up and down this. Yeah. So you can find one that's affordable to you, find one that's going to gel with you, but that could definitely be an avenue if you've been having a struggle with, just online dating or meeting people in person, then maybe matchmaking might be a avenue that you consider. So, but thank you very much.
It's a lot more approachable now too. That's one thing that I want to say is like matchmaking is much more approachable. So just think that your preconceived notion of what a matchmaker is, there's others out there that are not that.
That's so true. I used to get, oh, you're like the hitch guy. It's like, no, this is what we're doing. No, there's.
I get the hitch guy thing all the time too. Yeah.
Yeah. But definitely check out Jeaneva's work at jematchmaking.com and check out the webinar that she's going to be holding on February 9th. And thank you so much for coming on to my show. This has been absolutely great.
Thank you so much for having me.